The Middle East has a lot of complications and a long set of crises that are depriving millions of people from experiencing the type of life that many in the West take for granted, but Israel's nuclear stockpile is not a part of that list. The Iranian nuclear non-proliferation agreement has been a top foreign policy issue throughout Washington for the past 2 months. Approving or disapproving the deal was the first order of business for the U.S. Congress until the very last day of congressional action under the Iran Nuclear Agreement Review Act, September 17. Hours of debate have been conducted on the floors of the House and Senate. Both chambers have held roll call votes, and Senate Democrats bonded together to filibuster a motion of disapproval, a resolution that would have prevented President Obama from providing the Iranian sanctions relief. The Obama administration's main selling point for the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action is based on the theory that forcing Tehran to downgrade its nuclear program will make the threat of nuclear proliferation in the Middle East, the world's most frenetic and violent region, even without nuclear weapons, far less urgent. Yet we should remember that there is in fact a state in the region that already possesses nuclear weapons. That state happens to be Washington's closest ally in the Middle East, Israel. There are a lot of mysteries surrounding Israel's nuclear arsenal. That is partly due to the Israeli security establishment's unwritten rule of never speaking about the country's nuclear weapons program in public in order to preserve the principle of deterrence, but there are indeed some basic elements of Israel's nuclear program that are acknowledged by defense analysts in the United States and around the world. While everyone believes that the Israelis possess a sizable nuclear arsenal, no one really knows how big that arsenal is. In 2008, President Jimmy Carter estimated that Israel probably had a minimum of 150 weapons in stock ready to use if the most dire circumstances warrant. 6 years later, the former president revised that estimate and put the figure in the 300 range, which based on Carter's calculations would mean that Israel doubled its arsenal from the 2008 to 2014 time period. Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif told reporters at the United Nations at the height of the P5+1 Iran nuclear talks that Israel is sitting on 400 nuclear warheads. The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists believes Zarif's figure is far too large and unrealistic given the fact that Israel's weapons are designed for deterrence purposes rather than actual higher trigger use. A better figure, the board writes, is 65 to 85 warheads as cited in a Rand Corporation study. To put it bluntly, the world doesn't have a clue about how many nukes Israel possesses, and that's precisely the point for the Israelis. The guessing game swirling over the proliferation community keeps Israel's enemies in the region on their toes. The Iranian government has been caught building enrichment facilities by Western intelligence agencies twice before. In 2002, a dissident Iranian group provided information to the United States pointing to a large-scale enrichment facility at Natanz. In 2009, U.S. and European intelligence uncovered another enrichment facility at Fort al-Bari deep into a mountain. But Iran isn't the only country that has deliberately deceived the United States and the international community in order to provide time for a full nuclear program. The Israelis, as Walter Pincus wrote in a Washington Post story earlier this year, blazed the trail decades ago. In the 1950s and early 1960s, the Israeli government repeatedly stonewalled U.S. requests for information on possible weapons development and at times purposely lied to their U.S. allies in the hope of giving the nuclear program more room to breathe. In 1960, Israel referred to its Dimona reactor both as a textile plant and as a metallurgic research installation to the U.S. State Department. Foreign Minister Shimon Peres assured President John F. Kennedy in a 1963 meeting in the Oval Office that Israel would not introduce nuclear weapons to the region. President Kennedy was so concerned about a possible Israeli nuclear weapons program that he demanded Israel admit American inspectors into Dimona to snoop around. The Israelis agreed to those requests, but made sure that those visits would not lead to anything incriminating U.S. inspectors. According to a long-read investigative report in The Guardian, were not permitted to bring their own equipment or collect samples at the site. The founder of the State of Israel and the country's first prime minister, David Ben-Gurion, made it his mission to ensure that the one homeland for the Jewish people would be protected from an ever-present threat of Arab attack. Establishing the ultimate deterrent was therefore a major agenda item for Ben-Gurion. He hinted in an April 1948 letter to one of his operatives in Europe that Israelis needed to fast-track their research into building a stockpile of nuclear bombs that would safeguard the Jewish state. In the early 1950s, Israel was not a powerhouse in the Middle East as it is now, newly established in 1948 and surrounded by hostile Arab states that would wage war on Israel on numerous occasions until the mid-1970s. Ben-Gurion was concerned that his people would eventually fail to keep up in a conventional arms race with their Arab enemies. Israel, he argued, needed an insurance policy in order to survive in a neighborhood filled with adversaries. Days after his resignation as prime minister, Ben-Gurion intimated in remarks why he believed a nuclear program was so instrumental to Israel's ultimate security and survival. It all had to do with the intentions of Egypt, Syria, Jordan and Iraq. I do not know of any other nation whose neighbors declare that they wish to terminate it, and not only declare, but prepare for it by all means available to them. We must have no illusions that what is declared every day in Cairo, Damascus, Iraq are just words. This is the thought that guides the Arab leaders.